World War II. The Soviet Union stands as a nation under siege. Nazi armored divisions carve ruthless paths across the endless steppes, their steel tracks crushing farmland into dust and turning hope into despair. Overhead, Luftwaffe bombers roar across the sky, unleashing waves of fire upon cities, leaving behind smoke, grief, and broken lives. Amid this storm of destruction, a young woman steps forward. Her gaze is sharp, her determination hardened by the flames of war. Her name is Lyudmila Pavlichenko. History would later remember her by another name, Lady Death. With a sniper's rifle in hand, she would carve her legacy into the brutal heart of the conflict, striking terror into the Nazi war machine. Who was this woman who became the most lethal female sniper in history? What pushed her to endure the brutal fighting around Sevastopol? And how did her courage leave a lasting mark on a world consumed by war? This documentary is created strictly for educational purposes, examining historical events from a neutral viewpoint. We strongly oppose violence and war in any form. This is the story of Lyudmila Pavlichenko. The World War II was a global storm that swept across continents, claiming tens of millions of lives and forever altering the course of human history. In June 1941, Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union and the largest military campaign the world had ever seen. More than 3 million Axis soldiers, backed by thousands of tanks, heavy artillery, and swarms of Luftwaffe aircraft, smashed through Soviet defenses like a blade cutting through grain. Entire cities were reduced to burning rubble, villages vanished from the map, and millions of lives were shattered in a matter of weeks. The Soviet Union, stunned by the speed and ferocity of the attack, struggled to respond as its western territories collapsed at an alarming rate. Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltic states were swallowed by the advancing Nazi forces. Their people faced unimaginable suffering, mass killings, forced labor, and the systematic destruction of their communities and culture. Entire Soviet armies were surrounded in massive pincer movements. Soldiers were either cut down on the battlefield or captured and forced into brutal prisoner-of-war camps where starvation, disease, and cruelty claimed countless lives. By the summer of 1941, the Red Army was only a shadow of what it had once been. Its ranks had been devastated, and its resources were stretched to the breaking point. Soviet leaders confronted a harsh truth. The survival of their nation depended on mobilizing every available resource, every citizen, every ounce of strength. Yet in this dark moment, the Soviet people rose to the challenge. From the industrial factories of Moscow to the distant farms of Siberia, ordinary citizens transformed into soldiers, driven by a fierce determination to defend their homeland from the fascist invader. Among them was a young woman named Lyudmila Pavlichenko, whose name would soon become legendary, spoken with admiration by allies and fear by enemies. Born on July 12, 1916, in the Ukrainian town of Bielya Tserkva, Lyudmila was not born into a military family. She was a thoughtful and curious girl, known for her sharp intellect and quiet ambition. Her dream was simple: to live a peaceful life as a historian, studying ancient texts and uncovering the stories of civilizations long past. Her childhood unfolded during the turbulent early years of the Soviet Union, a country rebuilding itself after revolution and civil war. Growing up surrounded by stories of hardship and sacrifice helped shape her strong sense of duty and resilience. But war has a cruel way of rewriting dreams. Lyudmila's future would not unfold in quiet libraries or lecture halls. Instead, fate would lead her to the brutal battlefields of her homeland, where her rifle would write a very different kind of history, one defined by courage and defiance. At the age of 25, she was a university student in Kiev. Her future seemed full of promise. Her days were spent attending lectures and studying late into the night, her mind filled with ideas about history and hopes for the future. Then the German invasion came, a thunderclap that shattered her world and changed her destiny forever. When the call to defend the Soviet Union echoed across the nation, Lyudmila did not hesitate. Fueled by fierce patriotism and an unbreakable determination to resist the invaders, she volunteered for military service. Rather than choosing a traditional role, she selected one of the most demanding positions on the battlefield, a sniper. It was a role that required not brute force, but patience, precision, and iron discipline, qualities she possessed in abundance. Her path would lead her from the embattled streets of Odessa to the rugged cliffs of Sevastopol, where she would face her greatest trials and ultimately secure her place among the most formidable snipers in military history. Lyudmila Pavlichenko was the daughter of a government clerk and a schoolteacher. She grew up in a modest household where education was deeply valued. From an early age, her intelligence and determination set her apart from others. She loved reading and quickly developed a fascination with history, absorbing stories about ancient empires, legendary battles, and the rise and fall of great civilizations. "I wanted to understand why people fought," she later wrote in her memoirs. "What made them willing to sacrifice everything for a cause?" Her parents encouraged her curiosity and supported her ambitions despite their limited resources. When she was 14, the family moved to the bustling and historic city of Kiev. There, Lyudmila thrived in the city's vibrant intellectual environment. She excelled in school, earning praise from teachers for her sharp analytical mind and relentless determination. But life was not without hardship. To help support her family, she took a job as a teenager at a factory in Kiev, working long hours grinding metal in noisy workshops. The labor was exhausting, leaving her hands rough and calloused, but it also taught her discipline, patience, and perseverance, qualities that would later prove essential on the battlefield. During her free time, searching for relief from the harsh routine of factory work, she joined a local shooting club. It was a simple decision that would change the course of her life. The first time she held a rifle, she discovered something remarkable, a natural gift for marksmanship. The balance of the weapon, the concentration required to line up the sights, the calm breath before pulling the trigger, it all felt instinctive to her. "I wasn't trying to become a soldier," she later said, "but I loved the precision, the focus. Every shot felt like solving a puzzle." Her ability quickly became obvious. She often outperformed many of her male competitors, her steady hands and keen eyesight making her one of the best shooters in the club. By 1937, Lyudmila had enrolled at Kiev University, pursuing a degree in history. Her dream of becoming an academic seemed closer than ever. She spent her days attending lectures, studying medieval Europe, the history of the Russian Empire, and the revolutions that shaped the modern world. She was especially fascinated by how individuals could influence the course of history, an idea that would soon take on a deeply personal meaning. But even as she focused on her studies, the political climate in Europe was growing darker. The rise of Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany cast a long shadow across the continent, threatening the fragile peace that remained. By 1941, the possibility of war hung heavily in the air. Many people sensed that a major conflict was approaching. When German forces invaded the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941, Lyudmila's world changed overnight. News of German tanks crossing the border, of bombed cities and suffering civilians, struck her with overwhelming force. Listening to the radio reports of destroyed villages and grieving families ignited a fierce determination inside her. "I couldn't remain a spectator," she later wrote. "My country was under attack, and I had to do something." Leaving her studies behind, she went straight to a Red Army recruitment office in Kiev, determined to join the fight. The officers there, seasoned veterans, were skeptical. A woman a sniper? To them, the idea sounded absurd. "Go home, girl," one officer told her. "War is no place for you." But Lyudmila Pavlichenko was not a woman who gave up easily. Her determination was as unbreakable as steel. To prove she deserved a place among the soldiers, she requested a live shooting test. Standing at the firing range under the watchful eyes of skeptical officers, she calmly lifted her rifle. With steady breathing and careful aim, she fired at distant targets. 2 precise shots rang out, both striking with impressive accuracy. The sharp echo of the rifle silenced the doubts around her. There was no more debate. In August 1941, Lyudmila Pavlichenko was officially accepted into the Red Army's 25th Rifle Division. She was issued a Mosin, Nagant rifle, a tough bolt-action weapon chambered in 7.62 millimeters and fitted with a telescopic sight, before being sent toward the front lines. Her preparation was intense. Training quickly immersed her in the brutal realities of warfare, survival skills, advanced marksmanship, stealth, and endurance. She learned to crawl through mud, thorns, and broken terrain. She practiced blending into tall grass, ruined buildings, and snowy landscapes. She trained herself to slow her breathing and remain perfectly still while waiting for the perfect shot. Many of her instructors were experienced snipers who recognized her natural ability, but they also warned her about the dangers that came with the role. "A sniper lives in silence and shadows," one mentor explained. "You strike without being seen. But remember, the enemy will always be hunting you." Lyudmila absorbed every lesson with intense focus. She spent countless hours practicing with the Mosin, Nagant, learning its strengths and weaknesses, the strong recoil, the stiff bolt that sometimes jammed in freezing weather, and the scope that could blur in rain or fog. She studied wind direction, distance calculations, and how to predict the movement of enemy soldiers. Her training also included mental conditioning, preparing her for the heavy emotional burden of eliminating hostile targets, a weight she would carry long after the war. By the time she completed her training, Pavlichenko was no longer simply a history student. She was ready to shape history herself. Her rifle became a weapon of resistance, and her determination formed a shield against fear. Her first experience in battle came in August 1941 in the port city of Odessa, an important Black Sea harbor under siege by Axis forces led by the German Fourth Army alongside Romanian troops. The 25th Rifle Division was assigned the difficult mission of holding defensive positions against an enemy determined to capture the city at any cost. Odessa had become a storm of destruction. Historic buildings collapsed under artillery bombardment. Streets were buried beneath shattered bricks and twisted metal. Smoke hung thick in the air, mixed with the sound of explosions and the cries of wounded soldiers. In the middle of this chaos, Pavlichenko, now a Red Army private, entered the battlefield. Her Mosin, Nagant rifle became her constant companion in a world that seemed to be collapsing around her. The role of a sniper was unlike any other position in combat. It was solitary, demanding, and unforgiving. She learned to disappear into the ruins, pressing her body against cold stone walls or broken concrete, remaining perfectly still while waiting hours, sometimes even days, for the right moment to fire. "Every shot was a message," she later wrote. "If you invade our homeland, there will be consequences." Her first confirmed target came when a German soldier unknowingly crossed a debris-covered street directly into her sight line. In that moment, everything seemed to slow. She steadied her rifle, exhaled slowly, and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out. The soldier fell, and Pavlichenko felt the weight of the moment immediately. It was a strange mixture of shock, relief, and grim understanding. "It was him or us," she later reflected. "I chose us, but I never forgot his face." That first engagement hardened her resolve and prepared her for the brutal reality of her duty. Within just 2 months, she had recorded 187 confirmed eliminations, each one an enemy soldier, machine gunner, scout, or officer. Every engagement was verified by her spotter, a young soldier named Mikhail, who soon became her trusted partner on the battlefield. Her skill seemed almost unreal. She had an extraordinary ability to remain invisible while observing the battlefield. Often she focused on high-value targets, disrupting German units by eliminating officers and machine gun operators. She could lie motionless for hours, hidden among rubble or vegetation, ignoring pain and exhaustion while scanning the landscape for the smallest sign of movement. Sometimes it was a brief flash of sunlight on a helmet. Other times it was a shifting shadow behind a shattered window. When she fired, the shot was precise and devastating. Many of her targets were officers, and their sudden loss often threw enemy units into confusion. A fellow sniper, Ivan Petrov, later described her with admiration. Lyudmila was like a phantom. She could lie still for hours, completely invisible. Then, one shot, and another German soldier was gone. Even the men who doubted her at first came to respect her. Her reputation spread quickly among Soviet troops defending the city. Her name became a symbol of pride and determination for soldiers struggling to hold their ground. Civilians hiding in basements and shelters also began hearing stories about the young sniper protecting their city. One schoolteacher named Anna Soliva, who sheltered with her students during the bombardment, later remembered, "We heard about a sniper named Lyudmila, a young woman who eliminated enemy soldiers one by one. Just knowing she was out there gave us hope." But despite the courage of the defenders, Odessa's fate was becoming clear. Axis forces continued tightening their grip on the city. Their superior numbers and heavy firepower slowly overwhelmed Soviet defenses. By October 1941, Odessa could no longer be held. Pavlichenko's unit was ordered to evacuate by sea. The withdrawal was chaotic. Ships crowded with wounded soldiers and civilians while enemy aircraft attacked from above. Standing on the deck, Pavlichenko gripped her rifle tightly as she watched the skyline of Odessa burning in the distance. Despite the defeat, her determination remained unbroken. Her story was far from over. She was soon transferred to Sevastopol, a heavily fortified Crimean city perched on rugged cliffs along the Black Sea. There, the fighting would become even more brutal. The city served as a critical stronghold for Soviet resistance and a vital base for operations in the Black Sea. From October 1941 until July 1942, siege of Sevastopol subjected the city to relentless assault. German and Romanian forces continued to pound the city's defenses with artillery barrages, bombing raids, and relentless infantry assaults. Amid this devastation, Lyudmila Pavlichenko hunted patiently through the hills, trenches, and shattered buildings. Her rifle remained a constant danger to the enemy. She was not only facing ordinary soldiers. German command had deployed their most skilled marksmen, elite snipers trained specifically in counter-sniper warfare. These specialists had studied tactics designed to track and eliminate snipers like her. The resulting encounters became tense duels of patience and intelligence, a deadly game of hunter and hunted. One mistake could mean death. Pavlichenko adapted quickly. She used clever tricks to expose enemy snipers. Helmets placed on sticks acted as decoys. Small mirrors flashed sunlight across ruined walls to provoke a shot that would reveal an enemy position. She shifted locations constantly, rarely remaining in one place for long. Months of combat had sharpened her instincts. The battlefield around Sevastopol was unforgiving. Artillery explosions shook the ground day and night. Shell fragments tore through buildings and trenches. Her body was often bruised and battered from the blasts, and the constant thunder of artillery left her ears ringing. The strain was immense. Food was scarce. Sleep was rare. The danger never faded. Yet her determination never weakened. "I thought about the children in destroyed villages," she later wrote. "That thought kept me going." Her record continued to rise. 200 confirmed eliminations. 250. Then 309 by June 1942. With that number, Pavlichenko became the deadliest female sniper in history. Many of her targets were not ordinary soldiers. She focused on officers, radio operators, machine gun crews, and artillery observers, individuals whose removal could disrupt German coordination and slow their attacks. A Soviet officer, Colonel Yuri Fokhov, later remarked, "Pavlichenko was more than a soldier. She became a symbol. Her very name frightened the Germans. They called her Lady Death, and the title suited her." The German command grew increasingly frustrated by her effectiveness. They broadcast propaganda messages through loudspeakers, trying to intimidate or demoralize her. Some even offered rewards for information leading to her capture. But Pavlichenko remained elusive. Her training and battlefield awareness kept her one step ahead of the enemy. Still, the siege of Sevastopol was a brutal trial. She suffered several injuries during the fighting. Shrapnel tore through her leg during one bombardment. A bullet grazed her arm, leaving a permanent scar. Another nearby explosion left her temporarily concussed, blurring her vision for days. Each wound tested her resolve. Yet she refused to abandon the front. "I fought for my people," she later wrote. Pain meant nothing compared to what they were enduring. The emotional burden was even heavier. Every engagement carried a cost. The faces of the soldiers she shot sometimes returned in her dreams. I knew they were human, she admitted in her memoirs. But in battle I had to see them as threats, or I would not survive. In July 1942, after months of relentless fighting, Sevastopol finally fell following a massive Axis assault. The city's defenses collapsed under overwhelming pressure. Pavlichenko was evacuated by submarine shortly before the final defeat, barely escaping with her life. Her body carried scars from months of combat, and exhaustion weighed heavily on her. Yet her spirit remained unbroken. Although the fall of Sevastopol was a devastating loss, Pavlichenko's reputation had already become legendary. She had become a symbol of resistance, her rifle representing the determination of a nation fighting for survival. When Pavlichenko had first arrived in Sevastopol in October 1941, the city was already standing on the edge of catastrophe. The siege of Sevastopol would become one of the most brutal confrontations on the Eastern Front. Adolf Hitler had ordered the city captured at all costs. The German 11th Army, commanded by Erich von Manstein, advanced toward the fortress with more than 300,000 troops. The Luftwaffe bombed the city relentlessly. Factories, homes, hospitals, and schools were reduced to broken skeletons of steel and stone. Despite heavy losses, Soviet defenders transformed the ruins into a network of defensive positions. Every shattered building became a fortress. Every street turned into a battlefield. Urban warfare in Sevastopol was relentless, fought house by house, room by room. In this environment, snipers held enormous power. Hidden in the wreckage of the city, their rifles spread fear through enemy ranks. Pavlichenko, now promoted to lieutenant for her bravery, was among the most feared. The city had become a graveyard, she later wrote. Buildings lay in ruins, and the Chernaya River ran red with loss. But every enemy I stopped meant one less danger for our people. Her Mosin, Nagant rifle fired with deadly accuracy. Its 7.62mm round struck targets at remarkable distances. She focused particularly on German officers directing attacks and machine gun crews suppressing Soviet defenders. Often she positioned herself inside bombed-out buildings, pressed against cold concrete, while waiting silently for hours in freezing conditions. A captured German officer later admitted, "We feared Pavlichenko more than artillery. Her shots came from nowhere. Our soldiers fell without warning. Some called her the devil's daughter." Her actions disrupted enemy movements and forced German soldiers to move cautiously through the city. Even when she was not firing, her presence alone created fear. German troops constantly scanned ruined windows and rooftops, searching for the sniper they knew might be watching them. Beyond her own combat record, Pavlichenko also trained new snipers. Many of them were women. She taught them how to use rubble and shadows as camouflage, how to observe enemy behavior, and how to strike quickly before disappearing again. One of her students, Lyudmila Pavlichenko, later remembered, "She taught us patience. She always said, 'Don't rush your shot. Let the enemy reveal himself.'" Her lessons were practical and life-saving. She taught her trainees to read the battlefield, to notice the reflection of a helmet, the movement of an officer giving orders, or the subtle change in shadows that might reveal an enemy sniper. Snipers worked in pairs, one shooter and one spotter, a method that improved accuracy and survival. But Sevastopol was an unforgiving place. By the winter of 1941, temperatures plunged to nearly -30°C. Snow buried the ruins, hiding debris and bodies beneath frozen drifts. Ice covered the streets. Frostbite threatened soldiers' fingers and toes. Food supplies dwindled. Defenders survived on tiny rations, stale bread, thin soup, or whatever scraps could be scavenged from ruined cellars. Pavlichenko's uniform was worn and patched from months of fighting. Her boots often filled with snow and icy water. Still she endured. "We were half-starved and exhausted," she wrote. But surrender was impossible. The mental strain was just as severe. German snipers and patrols were constantly searching for her. Orders had been issued specifically to eliminate the infamous Lady Death. Several times, she narrowly escaped death. Once, a bullet struck her helmet, glancing off the metal. Another time, an artillery shell collapsed a wall only inches from where she had been hiding. Every close call sharpened her awareness, but also deepened her exhaustion. The faces of the soldiers she shot continued to follow her into sleep. I never became numb, she later confessed. Every shot took something from me. During one particularly violent artillery attack, shrapnel sliced across her face. She treated the wound herself, refusing to leave the battlefield. I stitched it together with shaking hands, she later recalled. The fight was not finished. Among Soviet soldiers, her courage became legendary. A soldier named Sergei Morozov later said, "Seeing Pavlichenko still fighting despite her wounds gave us strength. She proved we could survive." Even medics who treated her injuries were astonished by her determination. She was pale from blood loss, one nurse recalled, but her eyes burned with defiance. Pavlichenko's role in Sevastopol went beyond battlefield numbers. She represented resistance, proof that even in the darkest moments, human determination could endure. Her rifle shots echoed through the ruined city like a promise that the invaders would not break their spirit. But by mid-1942, exhaustion and injuries forced Soviet command to withdraw her from the front. Her body had been pushed to its limits. Yet her war was not over. Recognizing her symbolic importance, Soviet leaders assigned her a new mission: to travel abroad and rally international support for the Allied war effort. In August 1942, Pavlichenko began an extraordinary journey to North America. She became the first Soviet citizen to visit the White House. There she met Franklin D. Roosevelt and First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, who later described her as a remarkable woman shaped by the fires of war. Lyudmila Pavlichenko made a powerful impression wherever she went. She was only 26 years old, yet she had already faced the full force of the Nazi military and survived. The scars she carried told the story of her sacrifice. As she traveled across North America, she addressed crowds in major cities, speaking about the brutal reality of the war on the Eastern Front. Her speeches cut through the comfort of audiences far removed from the battlefield. One of her most famous appearances took place in Chicago. Standing before a packed hall, dressed in her Soviet military uniform decorated with medals, she spoke calmly but firmly. "I am 26 years old, and I have eliminated 309 fascist invaders. Gentlemen," she said, "don't you think you have been hiding behind my back long enough?" The audience erupted in applause. Her direct words shocked many listeners, but they also inspired them. Her speech helped strengthen support for the Allied war effort. Across the United States and Canada, newspapers celebrated her as Lady Death, the fearless sniper who had become a symbol of resistance. A Canadian journalist wrote that Pavlichenko's story served as a wake-up call for many in the West. "She stood before us," the reporter wrote, "scarred by war but unbroken, and reminded us of the price others were paying for freedom." Her visit proved to be a diplomatic success. It strengthened cooperation between the Soviet Union and its Western allies. During the war, the United States and other nations sent vital aid to the Soviet Union: tanks, aircraft, food supplies, and industrial equipment that helped sustain the Red Army's fight. But Pavlichenko's mission was about more than diplomacy. Her speeches offered audiences a window into the Soviet experience of the war, stories of bombed cities, suffering civilians, and the determination of ordinary people to survive. In Washington, D.C., she also met American officials and diplomats who were deeply impressed by her conviction. Yet her influence went beyond politics. She challenged deeply rooted ideas about women's roles in society. In a time when many still believed warfare was strictly a male domain, Pavlichenko stood as living proof that women could fight, lead, and inspire. During a rally in New York City, she spoke to thousands of women about the importance of supporting the war effort. "We are fighting for a world where people can live without fear," she told them. "You can help us achieve that." Her words encouraged many women to join wartime efforts, working in factories, hospitals, and support services that kept Allied armies supplied and functioning. Despite her confident public image, Pavlichenko remained deeply human. In quieter moments, she spoke privately with Eleanor Roosevelt about the emotional toll of war. She described the friends she had lost and the devastation she had witnessed. "I have seen too much suffering," she once said softly. "All I want is peace for my people." Eleanor Roosevelt was deeply moved by her honesty. The two women formed a friendship that continued long after the war ended. Through their letters, they shared thoughts about peace, rebuilding, and the future of a world recovering from war. Behind the legend of Lady Death was still the young woman who had once dreamed of becoming a historian. Her 309 confirmed engagements were not trophies she celebrated. Instead, they were memories she carried as a heavy burden. Her tour in the West was not always easy. Some reporters asked shallow or intrusive questions about her appearance or personal life rather than her experiences in war. Pavlichenko handled such questions with calm confidence. When one journalist asked about her hairstyle instead of the war, she responded sharply, "I came here to talk about the war, not about my hair." Her composure won respect, even from skeptics. By the end of her tour, Pavlichenko had proven that a single voice could influence public opinion, bridge cultures, and remind people of the enormous stakes in the fight against fascism. After the war ended, Pavlichenko returned to a Soviet Union devastated by years of conflict. Millions had died. Entire cities lay in ruins. Families across the country were struggling to rebuild their lives. She finally completed her education at Kyiv University, fulfilling the academic dream she had set aside when the war began. Her research focused on the Russo-Turkish Wars of the 18th century, a subject that reflected her lifelong interest in history. Later, she worked as a historian for the Soviet Navy, studying maritime archives and writing research papers. Her life became quieter, filled with books and historical documents instead of rifle shots and battlefield reports. "I simply did my duty," she once said in an interview. "I never sought fame." Yet her story continued to inspire many people across the Soviet Union. Veterans who had fought alongside her remembered her courage. "She showed us what bravery looked like," one former soldier later recalled. "She was proof that we could endure anything." Pavlichenko lived modestly in Kyiv, focusing on her academic work and personal life. She remained in contact with friends around the world, including Eleanor Roosevelt, exchanging letters about peace and international cooperation. However, the wounds of war never completely faded. Old injuries caused chronic pain, especially during cold weather. Sleep sometimes brought memories of the destroyed streets of Sevastopol. She rarely spoke about her time as a sniper. When young historians asked about her wartime record, she usually answered with humility. "I fought so that people could live," she once told an interviewer. "That is what matters." Even as she tried to live quietly, her legend continued to grow. Her story appeared in Soviet songs, books, poems, and eventually films. In 1957, she returned to Sevastopol and walked along the cliffs where she had once fought. Looking out over the sea, she remembered the soldiers who had never returned home. "They were the true heroes," she said quietly. Lyudmila Pavlichenko passed away in 1974 at the age of 58. Years of injuries and the stress of war had taken their toll on her health. Yet her legacy remained powerful. Today, her rifle is preserved in the Central Armed Forces Museum, where visitors can see the weapon once carried by the woman known as Lady Death. Her story reminds us that history is shaped not only by armies and governments, but by individuals whose courage changes the course of events. "I fought for life," she once wrote, "for a world without fear." Her legacy continues to echo today, a reminder that ordinary people can rise to extraordinary challenges. Heroes are not simply born. Sometimes they are forged in the fire of history. What do you think about Lyudmila Pavlichenko's story? Do you think you could have endured the challenges she faced during the war? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more powerful stories from history. Until next time, keep exploring the past, keep asking questions, and keep discovering the stories that shaped our world.